We're only 47 days away from the presidential election, and voter fraud seems to be a controversial issue. Listen to Congressman John Lewis at the DNC.
Today, it is unbelievable that there are Republican officials are trying to stop some people from voting. They're changing the rules, cutting polling hours and imposing a requirement intended to suppress the vote.
They're only asking to see ID. Think Progress and Common Cause released a 64-page report that True the Vote is intimidating voters. I think you might be confusing them with these guys.
Everything okay? Everything's fine. I'm just making sure.
Remember them? Yeah.
I'm here. I'm just a
New Black Panther Party at the voting polls in Philly. That's voter intimidation. With me are two people who've been watching our voting process. John Fund, columnist for the National Review, and Catherine Engelbrecht, president of True the Vote. We've been talking so much lately about voter fraud. I want to ask a basic question about the size of voter fraud needed to affect the election. Tell me, how many districts in how many states do you actually have to affect to mess with this election?
Well, let's take the 2000 presidential election. It was decided by 537 votes in just one state, Florida. Let's take the Al Franken Senate election in Minnesota in 2008, 312 votes. And Al Franken cast the critical vote that passed Obamacare, partly because 1,100 felons were found to have voted illegally in that election, made the difference.
I know in Georgia, they actually offered free of charge IDs. When did this whole concept of showing ID become racist or in effect intimidating voters?
I think it became a point when it was known that it would further a political agenda that kept him in the headlines.
Eric Holder, not exactly on the side of integrity in the election system.
No, he has sued almost every state that he could, trying to block their voter ID law. A 22-year-old white guy working for James O'Keefe walked into Eric Holder's polling place in May in Washington, didn't look anything like him, had a beard and an earring, and said, "Do you have an Eric Holder on your list?" And they said, "Sure, here's your ballot."
Hello. Do you have an Eric Holder?
Check it out here.
Northwest?
Holder or D-E-R?
Holder. That's the name?
I do.
Northwest, that's the address?
Okay.
Last name?
Please sign the name there.
I actually forgot my ID.
You don't need it, it's all right.
I left it in the car.
As long as you're in here, you're on our list, and that's who you say you are. Okay.
That's how easy it is to voter fraud, and if he had voted, no one would ever have known.
If people were volunteering to be poll watchers, what is something that they would be looking out for if they were looking out for voter fraud?
As a practical matter, there are those states that do require some types of identification that are unique. All states run their elections a little differently. Gotta love the 10th Amendment. You have poll watchers who are observing the process, making sure that if you're supposed to present certain types of identification, that's what's being presented. That only one ballot is being given. There's a big misnomer that it's about watching voters. That's not at all the case. It's designed to watch the process.
Voter fraud seems to track how close polls are. You get a very close election, you get a lot of interest in people showing up who don't look familiar to people, who may be from out of state and are bussed in for the day.
That amped up rhetoric, Kevin, a lot of folks are saying it is mail-in balloting, it's ripe for fraud, it's the wrong thing to do. When you hear those kinds of things, how do you respond?
Well, I disagree. We've been spending the last 20 years building processes around vote by mail because we felt like it was what was going to take over the industry. Anytime a state or county goes to vote by mail, or predominantly what we call the permanent list, like Maricopa County, people don't go back. So we looked at all the processes. And so first thing we have to do is make sure you get the right ballot. Voter registration, obviously a very critical component. The counties and states actually manage that themselves. So by the time we get a voter's name, he's been vetted or she's been vetted through the county as a registered voter, and then we're aligning the exact ballot that they need, what precinct they live in, and making sure that they get that.
What are the odds that fake ballots will start flooding the system?
We can't control somebody from a foreign entity or domestic manufacturing stuff and delivering it to a post office where the post office looks at it and says, okay, we'll take this in. Somebody walks in with a tray full of voted ballots. We're watching that all the time in coordination with USPS. Let's assume that somehow they got into the system. One, it's got to be perfect visually. It's got to use the same envelope, same paper, same style, same print, which a lot of that can be done. But more importantly, they have to know what precinct that voter lived in and the voter's name and their address, and they have to forge a signature. If we suddenly got 10, 15, 20 clearly fraudulent ballots, we'll figure it out. We can isolate those as fraudulent. We'll put them to the side. Counties will then, and the courts will decide what to do with them. While we can't stop someone from trying, that will catch them.
Gotcha. Are you confident that states and counties are giving you and their voters enough time when they're making changes because of COVID regarding mail-in ballots?
It's more challenging for the states in the East than it is in the West because we're already set up to do vote by mail here. But we're doing Georgia ballots, and they're new to that process. So they're going to have a lot more human error events just naturally. Their voter registration system may not be updated as much as you would like it to be. We're getting large requests every day from counties that have never done vote by mail before because so many people are signing up for it. So my biggest concern for those counties is just the time it's going to take to process them when they come back in, verify the signatures, and then take the tabulation. That delay means we're probably not going to know how every vote is tabulated for a week, maybe even 2 weeks after the election. But you want to get it right. And if you remember past election cycles where the media got it wrong because they wanted to report by the 10 or 11 o'clock, think back to 2000. It's critical that everyone take a deep breath and realize that this is a monumental job to get this many people to vote all in one day. I'm not worried about Arizona at all. I mean, you may have a one-off human error factor that comes into play, more likely in a small county, or you may have a fraudulent attempt that gets news media, but I'm not worried about Arizona, no.
All right, Kevin Runbeck. Runbeck Election Services, busy time of year for you. We thank you for giving us